Whoa, it's May. Mermaid season! Hi there and welcome to my channel. It's the month of May and that's mermaid season. So I looked up some things for sirens and mermaids and decided to make a dark siren. This doll came in a lot of dolls that were listed for parts only. She's missing part of a leg, she's missing both her forearms or hands. Luckily, I had some spare parts, but the leg, well, that's not an issue. So we're going to prep her for customization. These are the new arms and hands that I had in my spare parts. And well, first things first, let's pop up the legs. Come on. There we go. Now we're going to cut off her hair, cut off her ears, and remove her head. You can use the boiling water for this part. I just happen to have very strong hands, and sometimes I get lucky. Come on! Oh! Now we're going to take out the hair plugs. Off camera, I then took off part of the bottom part of her torso and drilled into her with my Dremel tool. Of course, that was after I took off her factory paint. Now, using this armature, I went ahead and glued it in and used Apoxy Sculpt to secure it in place. And then taking quilt batting, like Kaypea Creations does on her channel, we're going to just wrap this around and around and around, and then secure it with a little bit of hot glue until I'm satisfied. Now, you can go with any body shape that you want. This is the one I chose for her. I could have gone a little chunkier at the top, but I decided to leave it as it was. Last year's mermaid that I did, which I did not film, was a bit chunkier. I drew out a fin pattern onto some paper, which of course was folded in half, and cut it out with some scissors. This way you have a symmetrical pattern. Ta-da! I also made a tail pattern too. See? I used her body shape and just traced it for that part. Well, her new body shape. Taking some easy steam, I then ironed out some cotton fabric, traced the pattern onto the easy steam, cut it out, and put it onto one piece of fabric for one side of the fin, because we need two. And then I did the same thing on the other side. I removed the paper, put it down, and pressed it down as to make the bond permanent with my iron. Then I cut out the second piece. It's just easier this way. And then I pressed it one more time to make the seal permanent. I also put a little bit of wire at the top of that to help with floppiness and stability. Now let's take this fabric, cut out a piece, and use our pattern to cut out our two pieces. Using the wire, I used that to secure the fin to the bottom of the body. And this armature, I love it. So flexible and fishy. Now let's take some pins and just pin on your material. And then I used a ladder stitch down both sides to give it a nice clean seam on both sides. A ladder stitch basically, Dolllightful actually does a better job at explaining it. But basically, it makes the illusion that you sewed it on a machine. So the seam is very nice and neat and not very, noticeable. Then taking some more needle and thread on both sides, I went ahead and tacked down the bottom of the fin, and I did one side at a time. So fishy. She needs something for the hips, though. She needs a transition, and she's going to need some fins. So let's get to it. Now, what I did last year was I took my doll and I used Apoxy Sculpt to give her a little bit bigger hips and to do make the transition from the fabric to the plastic a little bit better and as seamless as I could. So let's do the same thing. So I took my Apoxy Sculpt, took half and half, 50%, half A, half B, mushed it together, and then mushed it and sculpted it on around her waist. You'll notice this stuff is white. Well, you've also noticed that her arms by now are a different color. We're going to fix that, but let's first give her some shells with some starfish with the Apoxy Sculpt, and then take her outside for a good airbrushing. I airbrushed her top, her head, which I also patched with Apoxy Sculpt, and then airbrushed her fin in a different color. The top of her body I did in black, and then I used the same paint that I used for the fin and airbrushed the transition to help make it a little bit more seamless. Now, these starfish need some color, so let's give them a little paint. I used coral, and I tried using purple, but this purple, it's just too dark. It's not standing out at all. Let's try some red instead. Metallic red. Perfect. Now it looks like I have a little bit of shadowing around it. See? Highlighting and shadowing. And of course I did that with dry brushing. Taking down some more watered down acrylic paint, I used purple this time to give the fins some detail. It took a while, and I did both sides, and I also went over the edges too. So nice. But, yeah, fins. But they'll have to wait for now. First, we need a face-up for this poor girl. She's been waiting, I think just a little bit long enough. Taking my watercolor pencils, after I put down 2 coats of Mr. Super Clear over her head, I went ahead, in matte, by the way, I went ahead and began adding details. I added highlights to the nose. I began lightening up the eyes to try to give, some contrast between her skin and the flesh. Skin and her eyes, rather. And try to do a waterline with pink. Took different shades of gray also to give it a little bit of shadowing at the top. But mostly I'm just trying to get as much white as possible on my eyes for the first couple coats. I also added some blushing to her lips and to her cheeks. Keep that kneaded eraser handy. It comes in so nice when you make a mistake, especially on something like this. Don't want her to look like she's got smudges everywhere. Then taking silver eyeshadow, I brushed that onto her eyelids. And then I traced out some eyebrows. I decided to give her a little bit of a wicked siren look, like a predatory, you are my prey kind of look. Then I gave her some highlights underneath her eyes. But this is starting to blend together a little bit much. Well, for this coat, I don't think it matters too much. We're just gonna keep going, and yep, there's blushing for the cheeks. Now she needs another coat of Mr. Super Clear. After that coat is dried, I went ahead and used my purple watercolor pencil to try to trace out her eyeline. Gave her some more detail to her lips, and sorry, my new camera does go blurry sometimes. You'll notice a difference in footage. I actually found another new camera on sale by Kodak, and this Pixel Pro camera, I tell you, totally worth the money. I highly recommend it. I added a pink eyeshadow on top of the silver to make the color pop out a little bit more, and just kept adding more layers of color to try to get those eye whites nice and bright. It's just really hard though on a dark skinned doll. It's always a bit of a risk. Sometimes you might accidentally take off previous layers. To make her eyes stand out, I decided to give her yellow eyes. Cat-like. Since this was a werecat to begin with, I thought that the yellow irises would be totally unique and at the same time very fishy. And boy, did they stand out. Well, not enough though. More color! After another coat of Mr. Super Clear, we're going to add some more color. Try to add some more contrast, and I'm still struggling here. Don't worry, it gets better. After another coat, we're going to put a little bit of shadow at the top and give her a little bit more contrast in there as much as we can between the white area and the silver. I'm going to give her pupils. I decided to go with the cat-like slit. A little bit more yellow, some more white to the eyebrows. It's just amazing watching her come alive, Granted, I know I painted her, but at the same time, it's so different watching myself do it on camera. More whites to the highlights, more pink to the waterline. Time for another coat. And well, this yellow is still not coming up quite as bright as I would like. And sorry, the camera it has an autofocus feature, so sometimes it goes a little blurry. Just bear with me. I will get better with the camera work, I promise. Now that I've got the best one that I can get, this one I'm sticking with for a while. No more phone. I just love the spooky look that she's getting. It's got that predatory, come hither, I might eat you. But let's face it, lots of fish in the sea, I think kind of have that look. A little bit more eyeshadow, but this time in a slightly contrasting color, a little darker pink on above that. Oh yeah, that's the ticket. Definitely needed that contrast. And I could see why pink is so popular with this doll for the original paint. A little bit more to her cheeks. And I'm still trying to give her some shadows and depth with a little bit of purple. But you know what? It's time. It's time for gouache. My pencils only build up so much, but when it comes to colors like this, those eyes need a pop, and, well, we gotta get it looking great. So we're going to use gouache to really bring out that yellow. And of course, the whites in the eyes, and brighten up the sclera. And then of course I added some black gouache to those pupils, really make those shapes nice and sharp and pop. And a little bit of white to add some details to her eyes. Now we're going to do the whites of the eyes. And you'll notice I'm only doing part of them because we're going to add some depth by adding some gray at the top. And I'm also trying to get as close to that yellow as I can without actually touching it. And of course the other side. And, well, the cool thing about gouache is if you make a mistake, you can go back and use a little bit of water to lift it right back off before you seal it. I also use my gouache to brighten up those eyebrows. I really wanted them to pop and contrast in comparison to her skin. And this is where I'm correcting that eyebrow a little bit, and right under her eyes. That's so much better. Now let's add some depth to these eyes finally with a little bit of gray and shadow and a little bit of purple. Now the purple here I'm using to do the eyeliner, and also we're going to give her some cool eyelashes that'll stand out. It's going to be a mix of colors though. A little bit of purple, a little bit of white, and this time I decided to do the Etalon style of eyelashes for the top lashes, which curve down at an angle and out. It's hard to explain. I really don't know how she does it. I kind of struggled a little bit with it in here, but I finally got them nice and wispy, just the way I wanted. And there's the gray for the top. And add in some of that depth. I don't have gray and gouache, so I should say that 5 times fast. I don't have gray and gouache, but I do have it in watercolor pencils. So the cool thing about watercolor pencils, you can wet a brush and lift the color right off. Now we're going to give it a little bit of more definition to these eyelashes for the top and to that eyeliner. Hi, pussycat. Sorry. I'm also going to use different colors to bring out more details for those top lashes. It's hard to get those without using several different colors to get the details just right. Time for the other side. And of course, we got to add some highlights in on those lower lashes, as well as some to the top. Being careful, of course. And you got to make sure that that lower eye line is really done well. We're going to add in some creases with a watercolor pencil after another round of sealant. I did try using a brush, but it didn't look right, so I erased it and tried again. Adding a little bit more eyeshadow to soften that up just a little bit. And then I decided to give her a little bit more for the bottom lashes. I love the ways these came out, though. A little bit more yellow and detail to the eyes. Just really want them to look beautiful and cat-like and have lots and lots of depth. And now I'm correcting the eyelashes on this one side. And of course brought in some more colors to help separate out a couple that kind of merge together. There we go. Much better. Then I decided she needed some more stripes. So here I am adding some, just to give it a little bit more highlight and just kind of a cat-like appearance. So instead of using white, I used gray, like a light gray. And I also use this on her nose, around the ridges of her nose, and along the bottom of her nose, just to make it, you know, just to give it some highlights and to make it stand out a little bit, to show that, yes, there is a nose there. After I was all done, I gave another coat of sealant, this time with semi-gloss Mr. Super Clear, and used white acrylic paint to do her eye shines. Once that was dry, I added some Liquitex gloss to her eyes and lips. I like how shiny she looks, but she looks like she's still a little bit wet, which is just what I was going for. Now let's give her some hair. Using 2 colors of yarn, I went ahead and cut a bunch of lengths out of both colors, combed them out using a knitting needle. You could use a hanger, you could use a knitting needle, you can use whatever you got handy. I just happened to have this handy. And then I glued them into wefts using my marble board and, well, a little bit of cling wrap on top, but normally it doesn't stick like this to the plastic. I don't get it. It normally comes right off, but the plastic's stuck. Oops. Well, once they're dry and trimmed to look nice and neat, I went ahead and started gluing them to the head, going around and around using Mod Podge to secure them securely to the head and giving them plenty of time in between to dry. I'm going to add some more to the sides now. And of course to the front. Once that's all filled in the front, I began to plot out my hairline. And no, it's not a middle part. Not exactly. I did a slight side part, which is why some of these are going on at a certain angle. See? There it is right there, just above her eye. Once that first round was done, I just started going around again. And then when I got to a point where I felt like the bangs were close to being done, I went ahead and glued the weft on backwards, and then used the hair straightener to heat up my metal chopstick, and then get those to lay down as nicely as I could. This way it looks nice and clean, and it looks like it's got a natural hairline there. And then I just kept filling it in and did the part. After it was all done, off camera, I went ahead and gave her 2 space buns. You could see why one bun is bigger than the other. one has more hair than the other. And no, I didn't give her traditional bangs, but I love the way it came out. Off camera, I also made 6 fins, 4 out of teal, and then 2 more out of purple, all of which I added off camera. I also added some more details to the fluke. I felt like it wasn't quite detailed enough. And well, the joints are showing on the parts where I airbrushed, so let's give her some armlets, little fingerless gloves, shall we? Taking some material in the same kind as the one I used for her tail, I went ahead and pinned it on wrong side out, sewed it off camera, turned it right side out, and put it back on her arm. After I put the hands back on, I added some color to it. Now, taking some plastic from a Monster High box, I decided to make her some ears. So I used my heat gun first to shape them, and then I used some nail products. This is polygel, clear polygel, to add wires so that they'll go into her head and attach, and to give the ear fins some detail. I don't know what it is about nail products, but sometimes it just comes in so handy to have it for doll making supplies. Once that first round of polygel was cured, I went ahead and added some more to start adding the details. We did the lines along the outside of the ears, and we did one line down the center of the ears. You might be wondering why I went through all this. Well, there's a reason. Once it was all cured, I wiped off the sticky layer off the acrygel, or the polygel, with some rubbing alcohol. Then I used my gel lamp to add some black gel polish and coated it with a thin layer of top coat, no wipe top coat. Now, using my chrome powders, and isn't it a difference when it's not clear? Woo! Look at that color. I gave it a pop of color. The cool thing about the polish underneath, it gives it some shadows. Once the chrome is all done, I went ahead and coated it again in non-wipe top coat. And did the other side, and now it's time to put them on. But first, let's put her head back on. Get on there. There we go. Using some pins, I poked some holes into her head. Then I used my pliers to guide the wires on her ears into her head. It took a couple tries, and I did break an ear doing this, so I ended up making a third ear for her off camera. See, that's where it broke. But there's a new... But here she is, ready for jewelry. Now we're at our final stages now. I decided to use some jump rings and cut them in half and put them on her rings, made them into rings on her fingers using some pliers. Next, using some jewelry glue, I decided to add some gemstones and metal shell pieces that I found in the resin making section of my craft store, and gave her starfish cheeks and some jewels on her face. Oh, that's so pretty. Let's give her some on her tail too. I gave her some shells and some starfish in alternating, and also some gems on all of her fins. I don't know what it is, but just adding gemstones just feels so magical when it's a mermaid. By the way, if you want to know what glue I'm using Eileen's jewelry glue from Michael's. You can usually find it in most craft stores. I'll also list all the supplies that I used in the making of this video down below. Let's add a couple more. And also another starfish at the bottom. There we go. You know what? She needs more stones on her face. She needs a little extra sparkle. She just needs some extra sparkle. I can't explain it. Let's put some in her hair too. I put a starfish and a half seashell in her hair. Now for that transition. I like the way the paint came out, but let's give her a little hip scarf and add some coins to it from a necklace I found in a thrift store once. I was so surprised when I found something like this in the thrift store. It has so many coins on it. I can make so many dolls with it. It's amazing. And now those rings need some color too, so let's add some gemstones. You might remember the square stones. I used them in my Elvira video. Oh, sparkling! And here she is all done. It's time for a day at the beach. So relaxing. And yeah, I used a shell bead and gave her a necklace. Here she is all done. I hope you guys enjoyed watching her being made. She is not getting a name because she's going up on my Etsy store. I'm really going to miss her, but I can't keep every doll I make. So now you guys have a chance to adopt her. I'll leave my Etsy store below. Thank you for watching. Have a beautiful, wonderful day, and happy Mer May!